So this next section is all about quadratic equations. For those of you that were in this class in fall, you know that that's where we pretty much left off in our review material. That was why I skipped ahead to chapter 8, because I knew this was coming. So most of this should be review, and most of it was in Algebra 2, so I mean, it shouldn't be too bad anyway. All right, so the general form for a quadratic equation would be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. One of the things that's most useful in solving a quadratic equation is factoring. And in order to take advantage of factoring, we need to take advantage of what's called the zero product property, or the zero product principle, as our book calls it. I think last semester I called it the zero factor property or something like that. I don't remember what I called it. Different textbooks call it different things, but it's the same principle. So the zero product principle. Whoops. Wrong principle. There we go. Fail. All right. So, the zero product principle states that if A times B equals 0, then A equals 0 or B equals 0. That's why when you're factoring, it's key that you get your expression equal to 0, because then when you factor, each factor could be equal to 0. And that helps you solve things. For instance, if you have 4x squared minus 2x equals 0, and you wanted to solve that, I would recommend you factor it. How would you factor that? Yeah, we can take the 2x out, because that's the common factor. So if I take out 2x, what am I going to be left with? Two x minus, not 2, 1. That's better. Remember, factoring is like distribution in reverse. So like when you factor out a common factor, you're practically dividing by it, and that's what's left over. So by the zero product principle, that means that either this piece is 0 or that piece is 0. So what I can do is I can set them equal to 0. So 2x equals 0, which would mean that x would be what? 0. And the shortcut there is if there's ever an x that's sitting outside by itself like that, you get 0 as its solution. So then I can say 2x minus 1 equals 0. What would you get from that one? Yeah, 1/2. Add the 1, divide by 2. Or if you remember, change the sign, divide by the 1 that's in front of x, and you'll get that. You can write it like that. A lot of times, I think on the computer, it'll say the solution set is blank, and it'll leave you a blank to put in the answers. You have to separate them by a comma. So that would look like this. So the solution set would be 0 and 1/2. And it doesn't matter what order you put those in, as long as they're both there. let's see. What if I wanted to factor this? And again, we went over this last semester, so hopefully you remember how to do it. And, yep. So -4 and -2 multiplied to give you +8, add to give you -6. Yay for the magic pen. All right, so what about this one? 2x squared equals 4 minus 7x. Thoughts? Okay, you certainly could. The reason why I don't like to move the x squared is because I tend to mess up when I'm factoring when my leading coefficient is negative, so I try to avoid that like the plague. So if I move this other stuff, while I'm moving more stuff, it tends to make my life easier, and so you do it the way you want, but you'll end up with the same thing. So anyway, you end up with what? 2x squared plus 7x minus 4 equals 0. So you subtract 4 and you add 7x to both sides. Do you guys need me to write that out, or? Okay. So now you got to factor this. Now with the 2 in there, that makes it a little more complicated, because now it's not just what multiplies to give me -4, but it has to give me 7. But you have to take the 2 into account. So you can either guess and check with 2x and x, or you can use that little factoring box I taught you to use, right? And remember, you don't have to use this if you can factor that without it. This is just something that might be helpful. First term goes there, middle term goes there, last term goes there. Multiply across the bottom. So that'd be -8x squared. These two blanks have to add to 7 and multiply to give me -8. What would fit the bill there? Multiplies to give me -8, adds to give me 7. So 8 and -1. It doesn't matter which one goes where, but the two boxes that are in blue, you put their greatest common factor here. What's the greatest common factor between those? 2x. And the rest of it's filled in by multiplication. 2x times 4 is 8x. 2x times x is 2x squared. X times -1 is -1x. And then you do this little butterfly bandage looking thing. And those are your factors. We'll talk more about that